Fantastic. I am back on our Monday sessions for Mapex. This is Mapex on Mondays. This is fantastic. And I get to have a chance of speaking to all these different great players around the world. Alex Landenburg, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. That's so great.
We have an opportunity, Alex, to connect with these different drummers, Mapex artists all around the world. Now, I know you're currently right now in Italy.
Yes, exactly.
And you're working on producing an album for someone?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sort of co-producing an album. I'm helping some friends with some songs that they're writing, and that was the original idea. But honestly, it kind of turned into a full-blown vacation because it's Italy, and you gotta love it. It's all about pizza, pasta, and coffee, and enjoying life.
Hey, you are talking to a true Italian here. We go down there. The red wine itself is fantastic. Absolutely.
It's everything is fantastic. It's just the whole country is just beautiful and unbelievable, really.
Good for you. And so now you're based basically in Germany now. Is that where you're living now?
Exactly. I moved back to Germany. I lived in England for a while, for about 2 years, and I've been all over the place, more or less. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of your journey here, because what I love with the opportunity of these interviews is for people to really get to know you and what your journey was to get to where you are, because you're playing right now. I've seen some video footage of what you're doing. It's absolutely fantastic. So let's go back to the beginning. Okay. You're young, you start playing drums at an early age. What got you involved with playing drums?
Yeah, well, I was always fascinated by music. Like our family, music was a big thing in the family. One of my earliest memories is actually the Live Aid concert. I was 5 years at the time. Yeah. Seeing Queen on the big stage, and you can sense like this is so important, and this is moving so many people, and it's such a great thing. So it was always a thing that was in the family, and I started playing a little bit of guitar when I was like maybe 8 years old or so. But somehow I was like, something's missing. And actually, before that, at 4 or 5, we had this thing in Germany where I went to like a musical kindergarten of sorts, playing xylophone and stuff, and I just loved it. So it was always there. And then maybe at around 8 or 9, I was like, I couldn't help but notice the drummers. I was always fascinated by the drummer. I had to look at it. I was like, wow, this is great. I want to do this, So I gathered all my courage, went to my guitar teacher at the time, said, you know what, I want to play drums. And he was like, if that's what you want to do, you should go for it. That's how it started.
Well, it's amazing. I'm not sure what it is about drumming that just brings us, it drags us into the feel, the fun, the enthusiasm, the craziness of playing. And that's absolutely fantastic. So did you start taking lessons at that time?
Yes. Fortunately, I was very fortunate that I had a great teacher that started with one-on-one lessons. And I think it's great, like to be self-educated and like to work on your stuff. But I think there are crucial points in your playing career where lessons are absolutely super important and just great to have, and especially at the start, having somebody to teach you like a proper grip. That was and playing from the wrist and all these things, and the importance of a metronome and timing and all that. That was gold, So I had lessons for only about 6 months or so, but it really shaped my whole idea of what this instrument is about. And it was just snare drum. Back at the time, I'm not like nowadays kids. It might be a little bit harder to get kids to just do the snare drum, but I didn't question it. Like at that point we were like, okay, it's snare drum, But it was great. I loved it.
It's amazing when you talk about education and the power of knowledge, when knowledge is delivered in a way that is inspiring, and when it's opening your mind. It doesn't matter whether it's a snare drum or a practice pad. It's a beginning stage to taking you down a path of widening your knowledge and widening your ability of being able to understand the passion that we have. So when you worked on those 6 months, what did you work on? Did you work on rudiments or stickings?
Yes. So basic stickings, rudiments, basic technique, but already like playing with the whip, sort of a motor thing, like that. So it came very natural to me, like the importance of playing from your wrist and all these things. Reading we started reading right away. So the whole, like, it was always completely natural to me to read drums as well. Like, I, I'm not the best reader in the world, but like I started with it, and it's sort of like it became another language that I had at my disposal. You know, that was a great thing.
Well, just having that understanding of
Yeah.
reading and just being able to step into a little bit of what that's about, like reading words, it just helps you speed the process up. And I'm sure when you're recording with the band or whether you're producing, that reading comes in to help every once in a while.
Totally, it totally does. Like I'm still writing down things in notation. Actually, like if there's like a little fill or something, and it's just much easier to write it in actual notation. And it's because of course the whole thing is a language. Like the music is a language, drumming is a language, and it's so much easier if you can also write it and read it. It just gives you
Yeah.
another level of thinking about it, of you know memorizing it and picturing it.
Well, this is great. What's amazing, what I love about these sessions is we've got people that are joining us. Sean Preston, he said hello. Tony McNally, who's from Newcastle in the UK. Victoria is from the Ukraine. She's joined us. James Harrison, Bobby Angelita, who's from upstate New York.
Wonderful.
Crockett Henley, hello from Nashville. Lonnie James Greer. This is so great to see people that are joining us now that are coming in, that this has a global reach now. So what you're saying now, Alex, which I love, is really sending the message out globally that the fundamentals of learning, if you can get those and understand those, they will be with you for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. It sets the stage, and then you got it inside and you take it with you wherever you go, and it just changes your perception of the instrument, and it enables you to actually let's say if you can read notation at least like at a medium level, you can grab a book and just work on it
Right.
by yourself, but it gives you that chance.
Absolutely, totally. So at this point now, you're a young kid, you're playing, you're taking some lessons. What drummers were influencing you at that time, or what bands? You mentioned Queen and Live Aid. Listen, I remember Live Aid like it was yesterday. It really was a powerful event, especially Phil Collins, who had performed in the UK and was the only one that took the supersonic jet to come by and perform also in the US in Philadelphia. Those are great, great memories. And that concert, absolutely incredible. And actually in the movie Queen they had that footage from there. So powerful. Who else were you listening to at that time? Who else were you hearing?
So big influences for me. Well, funny enough, like that you mentioned it, Phil Collins, absolutely. And here's another funny thing to me, or interesting thing. So as a little kid, you don't think of musical genres or anything. So I was just listening to hard rock, heavy metal, whatever. But I was also listening to Genesis or Marillion, yes, like 70s rock,
Right.
And I was playing along to that as a kid, not even knowing I was doing a 7/8 or a 7/4, whatever. I didn't care at that time because I was just like following the melody and the drums, and it was natural. So definitely Phil Collins. That was a big one for me on the heavy metal side, because of course I grew up. I was also like the typical heavy metal kind of kid, like with the music that I was listening to. So of course it was Metallica, Lars Ulrich, Nico McBrain, Iron Maiden. But probably the biggest one for me in terms of metal drumming was Nick Mensa from Megadeth, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago. Because Nick had that this wonderful style of playing, like the way he moved. You can tell that he had a lot of technique. Yeah. That he had almost like a jazz background. His dad was actually a jazz musician, and he was not stiff, and he didn't look like a butcher, but it was like fluid and like a cat basically. It was wonderful and still very powerful, and I just loved that. I wanted to be like that.
Oh man, well, you got some great people. So metal music and rock music was more what was driving you to play, right?
Absolutely, of course, yeah. In the beginning, that's for sure, yeah.
So were there musicians in the area? What part of Germany did you grow up in?
In the southwest of Germany, so close to the French border. If you think of France, Luxembourg, so right in the southwest, French border.
Oh, interesting. So with that now, were there musicians that you were playing with that were also into metal and rock at that time?
Yeah. Well, the really funny thing is that my friends that I started playing with when we were like 11, 12 years old, all of them became musicians, actually, professional musicians.
Hmm.
And actually, we started playing together again now during the virus time, because I was stuck back in Germany again. I was like, let's just do something again together. And so yeah, and we also played we played in the big band of the school. That was also the first thing I actually did, was playing big band jazz as
Really?
a little kid, and that was also a fantastic experience. And I have to be thankful to my music teacher, who was basically brave enough to put me on that seat, because it was totally over my head at the time. I was just sitting there all stiff, just going ding 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 ding, just hoping I could make it through the song. But that's how you learn.
So that was a music program in the school?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And we were
Boy,
lucky
how
with that, because it's not super common in Germany. It's not like in the States, where there's music programs all over the place. In
yeah.
Germany, it's sometimes more like you have to be really lucky to have a big band, and to be able to get this sort of jazz upbringing, you know.
Well, that's so good. I have traveled many times throughout Germany. I've got many, many students of mine, the Klaus Hesslers, the Marka Minimums,
Mm-hmm.
so many great Benny Greb. There's so many great drummers that have come from Germany that are wonderfully educated players. Udo Dahmen, who's one of the top educators in Germany, who was originally from
Yes.
Hamburg. Now he's down in Mannheim teaching at the Pop Academy. There's
Yes.
such great education happening in Germany. So at a young age, you were able to play in the music program. I mean, that is huge.
It is huge, and this is why I really think it's super important to push these programs, because nowadays, with all these distractions that we have it's even harder to get kids into music. Like when I was 12, 13, 14, compared to today, there was nothing. There was like, the internet wasn't was it well, what it is today. We didn't have cell phones. It
Yeah.
sounds like the Stone Age if I tell younger people about it, but that's the way it was. And so I was playing 4 or 5 hours, 5, 6 hours every day, because there was nothing else. But nowadays, I can see why kids are like, they're staring at their phones and stuff. There's a lot of distraction. So we really have to try to push them, towards music, and hopefully they will start to love it.
Boy, absolutely. It changes so much with the workings of the amount of information that's available today. There's so much information. But I got to ask you, with that amount of information, how do you feel having all that information? Is it helpful at times? Is it hurtful at times? And where's this next generation going with all this information?
That's a great question. I think the irony is that with all this information, that there's too much information, and there's no filter anymore. And
Mm,
I remember when I was a little kid, for example, Back to Basics, Dave Wecko.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was like our thing. Was like, okay, this is what drumming, what technique is about. And of course,
yeah,
later on, even Dave kind of reinvented himself and reworked his technique, and that was great. There's nothing wrong with it. But at least we had this standard, and
yeah,
even if it's not like the complete truth, it was a great standard, a
yeah.
great point to start at. And now it's like there's so much information, so there is great information, tons of great information, but I don't know, there's no filter, and people are trying to do things that are way too hard for them. They don't have the basics. They're skipping
Mm.
basics. They're jumping onto whatever quintuplets. They still can't do like an eighth note groove. Like, and I'm not trying to criticize. It's just like
Yeah.
it just doesn't make a lot of sense, like musically. You should be trying to build this thing, and that's what a good teacher is for, to give you the right information also at the right time.
Well, that's great information. I guess it's the excitement of so much information,
Of course.
and they want to get out and play. But when I was younger, it was about playing music first. You
Yeah.
got together with people and you played music, or whatever you learned from your teacher or from a friend, you wanted to apply it into your playing so
Hmm.
you could play music with other people. I think that's an important part of the journey of how this happened. But I mean, if as an educator yourself, check this out here. Here's Samantha Landa, Sam Landa. She's from the Montreal area and the Toronto area. She's from Canada. She said, "You're an incredible teacher. Definitely someone to follow and learn from." That's really fantastic to have that kind of
Thank you very
rapport.
much. Thank you.
She herself is a fantastic drummer. I had the chance of interviewing her recently, but there
Yeah,
it is. Saying they hear what you're doing. So now, with teaching wise, let's talk about the pandemic. The pandemic has challenged everyone,
Yeah.
and I've been teaching online for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
So when the pandemic happened, it wasn't that big a shift for me.
Yeah.
I'm in my studio. I'd go on and teach. I've been reaching thousands of people. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
What did you do when the band stops touring and now you were home? Did you get back involved with teaching?
Yeah, well, not right away. So to be completely honest, at first it was almost a bit of a relief, just because I was touring relentlessly for the
Right.
past few years,
Right.
and it was actually great to have a break. To be honest, I was like, okay, finally 10 days in the same bed, like no airports, like almost like a normal life. And
Yeah.
so, so for a while, to be honest, that was actually really good, and it gave me the chance to practice things that I was kind of putting off for a while, and now I could really focus on them because I had enough time to really go back into detail. It's not just like 2 weeks at home in between tours. You
Yeah.
cannot reinvent yourself in like 2 weeks. There's no way of like
Yeah.
really going over your technique or changing anything. It's just
Absolutely.
maintenance, and so it was actually great to have that chance. And then after a while, people started asking, and I was like, you know what? Everybody's like forced to go online now, and then get cameras and make sure these things work. So we all got into this, and it's actually fun. I actually enjoy teaching online. It's like, but to me, to be completely honest, like with intermediate or advanced students, it's great because it's more about concepts,
Yeah.
and you can communicate concepts
Yeah.
like perfectly online.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
with beginners, I would rather be a little more hands-on, make sure the fingers are in the proper position and all that. I'm not saying you can't do it, but
No, I hear what you're saying. It's a little, it's been a very, very different change in the concept of how we teach.
yeah,
And I'm more specific. I mean, I find myself when I'm with a student, I've got to go to the camera and hold my grip up so they can see the grip the way it is, and there's different ways that you adapt to it. But so a couple of things. So here you are taking some time on your own to practice. Were there any things in particular that you were practicing and working on?
yeah, I was like, that like there's all these things that you have at 85% or 90%, right? Like you can almost do them, and you can do them at home and you can do them in your practice space, but you can't do them in front of people or like you're not, because to me being able to do something means you can do it almost under any circumstances.
Yeah.
And because that's how it works. You get out on a festival stage, and the drum kit might not be perfect. You didn't sleep, all these things, So you have to be able to do it under these circumstances, and only then you can really do something, right? So there were a few things that I wanted to take from that 85 maybe to a 95% or something. So I started working more on my double strokes and my feet again. It's something that I've been doing for many years now, to get a proper double stroke roll, like the Virgil kind of thing, not the heel toe thing, but the sliding technique.
Yeah.
Kind of always preferred that one. And so that's getting better. Independence is always, or interdependence, I should say, is like a big thing. It's endless. You can work on it. You could live 1,000 years, and you can't cover all the possibilities.
Absolutely, man. This is, it's kind of interesting. We talk about independence alone. Jim Chapin's jazz book, the advanced techniques for the modern drummer.
Yeah.
There are still drummers who are into metal and rock, still going through that book as a jazz book just to open their independence up. And then when they step into Marco Minimum's book, this is interdependence. This gets into a whole level of going from independence to interdependence. And Marco, who is a phenomenal player. So there's tons of information always to work on. But that's great that you still have that desire to want to learn and be a student of the art form.
Yeah, I think we are all eternally students of this instrument because and I think that's the beauty of it. That's something I admire about people like yourself or Steve Smith, for example. To see people that are constantly evolving, and that's the beauty of it, because I want to do this hopefully for as long as I live. So you don't want to be repetitive and do the same thing all the time. But this instrument just gives you a chance to grow and endlessly. It's just so much fun, and then so many things you can do. Like
it really is the desire of the individual. If they want to push themselves, and listen, you mentioned Nico McBrain. He's still working on ideas. He's still pushing himself the way it is. I had the chance of talking to Achilles Priesta, another fantastic drummer who still pushes himself and push. So I mean, I think that's a part of we have to just kind of accept that in the way that we live.
Yeah, exactly. But then the funny thing is, I keep going back to basic technique also. Like I want to work on bigger stuff, and then I'm like, you know what? I still have to work my single strokes. I still have to work my double strokes. I always keep getting back to that, and that's what I'm always telling students as well. Like, imagine a great soccer player, for example.
Yeah.
Just like he doesn't stop shooting the ball towards the goal. Like that's still the thing he does, you know.
Well,
So
that's look at this. So let's go in here. Let's go. This is from who was your first teacher, Alex? This is from
the
Silke
yeah.
Deckman. Yeah.
Yeah, so actually, my first teacher is a guy from where I grew up, the same area. He's called Stefan Entres. Steve is what we call him. He is big into the whole Porcaro thing, like the whole Toto thing and all that. So I also was doing like my little boy version of the Rosanna Shuffle at 12, 13, like as best as I could. So that was a guy, fantastic teacher.
Wait, isn't it amazing that I met Jeff? Jeff became a friend of mine in 1976. I met Jeff back in LA at that time. We became good friends. I mean, his playing still to this day influences people. And here he is influencing Steve. Steve then is sharing it with you. And here we are many years later after Jeff's passing. We're still talking about Jeff Porcaro. This is incredible.
Isn't it, right? Like, yeah, of course, we're all standing on the shoulders of all these people. Like every time I hit a cymbal or I'm playing the drums, like I benefit from all these people before me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we learned from them, you know, and they inspired us.
Well, I think that what's great about it is that you really have stayed true to yourself in the learning process. So here you are now. You're a young kid. You're starting to meet some musicians. What was your first professional gig that you played?
Okay, that's kind of hard. What's professional? Like just in terms of being paid, I guess it must have been actually even with my friends when we were like maybe 18, 19 years old, and people decided it was worth paying us to play. So by that, and then I started teaching sort of professionally, officially, to calm the parents a little bit. I enrolled in university and to study English. But I was just full-time playing drums, and I was teaching, so that was also a professional thing for me, maybe at around 20, 21. And then my first big international gig was at 26 with Annihilator from Canada, actually following Mike Mangini. Mike Mangini did the record, and I was touring with that album.
Boy, talk about that. Because I love the band Annihilator. First of all, the band is freaking powerful. And with Mangini, driving this band the way it was, recording the album, then you get thrown on to play the tunes, to have to go out there and now play and understand what the hell Mangini did.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like in that first intensity of hitting the road and then traveling globally?
It was crazy. I remember I received an advance copy of the album, and
the album was metal. It was metal, right? The album,
metal, exactly.
Right.
And two or three things back then, they were so over my head. I was just praying. I just hope we're not doing these tunes, because it was like maybe 6 weeks or something to prepare. It's a lot of time, but not a lot of time, It's enough to learn songs, but it's not enough to up your technique in a major way.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Fortunately, we didn't do these songs, so whatever I had to do, I was sort of able to do. But it was a big learning experience. It's like stepping into such big shoes. Also, Randy Plack was the guy touring before me with Annihilator.
Yeah, and Randy's another phenomenal player,
phenomenal drummer, and so it was really something. And Jeff Waters, the guy, the main guitar, like the guitarist, the main guy from Annihilator, he's very demanding, but in a good way. Like I've learned so much. And he pays a lot of attention to everything. Like even like every crash cymbal I had to do had to be in the exact same spot as on the record and stuff. And like, okay, if that's the way it is, then it has to be like that. So that was a big learning experience and great. Like touring basically the world for the first time professionally, it was insane, which is great.
Here you are now. You're getting paid to play music. You're traveling the world, and that tour was probably that was a serious tour, if I remember.
It was serious. Like 8 weeks of touring
Yeah,
immediately. Last show was headlining one night of the Sweden Rock Festival. Big stuff. And
yeah,
here's another thing. Like the way I got that gig was through a student, a Canadian student of mine, um, named Chris Stevenson. Chris is actually a Mapex artist as well in Canada.
yeah.
And so he started with me because the family was in Germany at the time. Then he went back to Canada and he learned about Annihilator needing a drummer for the gig. So he emailed me back then, and that's how it happened. So one thing led to another. Like it's all connected. You never know if you're doing something what it might eventually lead to.
You absolutely never know. And that's why being on top of your instrument and trying to always be as prepared as you can
Absolutely.
to know your instrument. You don't know when that call will come in. And fortunately, you were prepared. You learned the tunes in a short amount of time. You hit the road. And by the first and second, performances, you were starting to find your own level of how to play, right?
Of course. Yeah. Of course, it takes these like few shows to get into it, especially if it's the first time you're doing it. It's overwhelming. The whole aspect of it, the touring, the bus, the crew. It was quite a tour. But then you get into it, and to me personally, I love touring because one of the most satisfying things to me is seeing like a tour when everything becomes like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
The crew and the band and everything just becomes perfect. The show gets better every night, and I just love doing that. That's just fantastic, and I much prefer that over one-time only shows like festivals and stuff. I always
Right.
feel like you cannot get that sort of perfection anymore that you reached on tour, working on it night after night and improving little things. That's just fantastic.
Well, and listen, what people sometimes don't realize when you're touring that degree, not every gig has exactly what you want. Not every sound check is exactly what you want. Sometimes gear breaks down. Sometimes you can't get certain gear in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
There are obstacles and challenges that are thrown at you every gig.
Like, absolutely. Which again brings us back to what I said. Like you have to be able to do your stuff, to play your stuff, almost under any circumstances.
Right.
It can't be just, I can only play this on that kind of pedal. I can only play with these kinds of cymbals or whatever. Like it's not going to work like this in the real world. So
where do you think? I mean, it needs a real. This is such an important part for people to hear. It needs a real positive, open-minded attitude to tour and be like that. You have to remove your ego. You have to have an understanding of gratitude, being thankful that you're doing the gig, and it's about serving the song because you've got people that are coming to hear you, and you want to deliver greatness to them, or at least as great as you can at that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you maintain that level of intensity of positive attitude?
I don't know. I think it's just well, first of all, everything. I totally agree with everything. Like our role as drummers, we have to give security to our band members. Like we are their metronome. We are the thing that they rely on usually. And this is how you have to approach a gig also, especially if you're stepping in for somebody else, and then you're like you have to listen to live recordings and try to figure out how's the person counting in, what are they doing, because those are the things that guitarists and bass players, those are the things they're listening to, and they need those things to be comfortable on stage. And only if they are, it can be a good show. And then of course there's the audience, and they're paying to see you, and they want to have a good time, and they deserve your best. And I don't know, I get it. It's just that I love I love the responsibility. I love that. I love taking that job and being responsible and knowing if I do these things right, everything will be great. So I just love having actually the responsibility. I'm fine dealing with that.
Boy, that's a great line, Alex, because I think accepting and taking on responsibility is something where I really believe all generations should learn. I mean, especially these next generations.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a different generation. We understood responsibility, and my parents, came from a different generation. We have to maintain those qualities of fundamental humanitarian, responsible, do the best you can, and realize that it's not just about us. It's about that person in the audience that paid for that ticket, that comes to see the show. They want to escape from their lives. and they want
Exactly.
to hear the band go freaking nuts. So again, that responsibility is to deliver that vision for them.
Exactly. While still having fun. So this is
Yeah,
something that you learn. Like it can also be intimidating and a little bit too much when you're younger. You want to be perfect, and it sometimes can even take away the fun a little bit for you. Like
yeah,
I've seen it happen, especially with other people, and then I'm trying to talk it out of them. It's a thin line. So
yeah,
you have to try to be perfect, but you also have to enjoy yourself. Like you have to find the joy in the whole in the process of doing it.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's hard to explain, but it's something that it kind of happened to me in my 30s. At some point I just started really also enjoying it. Like if I dropped a stick, I dropped a stick. Before, when I dropped a stick, it was like I was thinking about it for the next 3 or 4 songs, and then I wasn't there in that moment. I was not present, and it probably maybe that reflected on my drumming, and maybe that
Yep,
reflected on the whole thing.
yeah.
And so you have to get rid of that, and you just have to try to be as much in the moment as you can, and just enjoy that while being responsible, while being aware of everything.
In the intensity of performing, and I'm working on another book now. It's called Owning Now, and
Hmm.
owning now is about living in the moment and taking possession of that moment. So when you speak about that moment, it really is a matter of being inside that song 100% for the entire tune. When that tune ends and the next tune starts, now you're inside that next song 100%. And as soon as you stop and start to think about the tune or think about you drop the stick, you're out of that moment and we don't know what the hell's going to go on. So talk about what skill does it take to be in that moment?
What's it going to take to be in that moment? That's a brilliant question. I never really struggled with it that much, so it's kind of hard for me to answer that. I
Yeah.
think you I think if you really love what you do, and you really enjoy the music, and it becomes sort of like a positive feedback loop between you and the audience and the band and everything,
Yeah.
and you just can't help but being in that moment. Like I'm just trying not to have little things, like I said, dropping a stick or something. You just have to be over that,
Yeah.
and you can't let that ruin anything for you. So like, that's something that I really have to think about. That is a great
Yeah.
question, but hard to answer anything
Well,
on the spot.
you kind of answered it before because when you said accepting responsibility,
Yeah.
being responsible for that song and the players that are on the bandstand and the fact that you're being paid to live your passion, you got to give them the best every second of that
Oh
tune.
yeah, but that's a given. Of course, you can't be thinking about, oh, what am I going to eat later, or
Right.
like that's not how it works. You will never get anywhere with that kind of mentality. You have to take it. Like that's the thing. You have to take it seriously, but that doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. A lot
Right.
of people seem to think, that it's one or the other, but it's absolutely not true. It's the exact opposite. Yeah.
Well, that's a great point. Listen, when you get the chance and you make the decision, and to me, it's not about luck. It's not like you lucked out by meeting up with Annihilator. No, you put the hours in, you put the dues in, you rehearsed it, you put the 10,000 hours into your instrument. So when you got on
Yeah.
that stage, you were able to produce. So how did some of the other bands? I mean, and then at one point you replaced, was it Uli Kush
Yeah. Only also, yeah.
that you had to replace Uli also?
I had to replace Uli, which is another fabulous drummer, actually. Uli.
Yeah,
Um, that was a
fantastic.
very last minute thing too. This actually happened a few times throughout my career. It happened with Stradivarius from Finland, where I had like 5 days notice to learn everything for a tour and the whole material, get everything organized, and just jump on the tour. It happened again with Kamelot recently,
Yeah,
like 3 years ago or so, and yeah, so with Uli back then, it was 9 years ago. Like it was a band called Symphonia at the time from Finland,
yeah,
and they were touring. They had a big festival in Finland, and then they went over to South America. And Uli had an injury and couldn't do it, and so they called me up. But I knew him from before, and
yeah,
he knew I would be able to do it. So that was great. And this is also something that you learn, like to be able to jump in these situations. How you know, that's another thing, like being able to learn the songs quickly and all these things. But honestly, you know, as much as these musical things are important, I think maybe one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, is the personal side of things. Like
Yeah.
you have to be like a sociable person. You have to try to be a nice. No, you shouldn't try to be nice. You have to just try to treat others well. Like you know,
Right.
and be nice to be around because you're
Yeah.
gonna be locked in with people in a bus, and nobody wants to be around you know a crazy person or a horrible person. And so this is another thing. Like there's a lot of great musicians out there, and most of the time there's going to be more great players than great gigs.
Right.
So in the end, the personal thing is going to make probably the difference most often, I guess.
Well, this is a great point because being positive and being
Yeah.
a happy person, being able to bring energy to the band in a positive way, and not just on the bandstand, but like you said, you're hanging out in the bus, you're eating together, you're sleeping all in the same area. I mean, you gotta. This is like a family. You are in this together, and you've got to exist on that tour for 8 to 10 weeks, and you've got to like each other. You've got to make each other want to be happy. This takes a lot of personal skill.
Yeah, it takes a lot of social skills. Also, you learn a lot of social skills, obviously, of course, doing that, you know. And
Yeah.
of course, you cannot, you know, you. There's always going to be somebody, or you know, that maybe you know, there will be people that you will not be. Oh, what's the word? Stuck with the word now. Like where it's personally not going to work out with them that
Yeah.
well. But then you have to be able to deal with that as well,
Yeah.
professionally, and just you know give people space. And it's just yeah, it's a very basic thing to think about, but it's super important in the end. You know, it has to be authentic though. You can't pretend to be happy or you can't pretend to like people. But by having this positive attitude, these things come naturally. If you
Yeah.
treat others well, they most likely they would treat you well as well. So yeah.
Boy, those are very powerful words, and those are very powerful philosophies. Those are life philosophies. If we want success, we want to be around people that are going to be able to also be successful, with like-minded people,
Yeah.
and it's kind of being associated with what I like to call your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Your tribe of people that are good people. You like each other. You listen to the same music, and you're going to put your energy together to create a band that's going to go out there and create excitement and create work, so you can go out and make a living doing what you love doing. Who can say that? That's incredible.
Exactly. And people can tell if it's authentic. Like if you people can tell if there's a great chemistry on stage, and it just translates to the audience differently. It just it totally works. It makes a big difference. You know.
Absolutely. And this is not, old school. It's not corny. These are fundamental skills of life that if you want to be
Yeah.
successful, you have to put on your big boy and your big girl pants, and you got to be a good person that's dedicated to want to learn and grow and give 100% all the time.
Yeah, because of the whole musical side, that should be a given anyways. You
Yeah.
have to be able to play this stuff. You know,
Yeah.
otherwise it's not going to work anyways. Like otherwise you will not be in that situation. But then that's not the end. You know, that's just the beginning. And the stage is going to be 90 minutes, and then there's going to be 16, 17 hours in a day that are not playing on stage and that are just hanging around and like being around people, you know.
Absolutely. So between Axis, Stradivarius, Symphonia, Rhapsody, there's several different bands that you've been able to kind of weave in and out of. How did that all that come about?
Again, one thing led to another, and it's like this is another really like powerful thing I would say is or like a thing I learned is you it goes back to the same thing, but you always have to give your very best because you never know who's going to be in the audience, you know. So
Yeah.
it can be because we're all human beings in the end. It can be an evening where you say, you know what, like tonight I really don't feel like doing it, you know, but you just can't do that, you know, because of the fans first of all, but
Yeah.
then also there might be somebody, it might be somebody watching you play, and it might be some sort of producer or somebody that's going to give you a call, like maybe a few years later, but it's going to lead to something. And so mostly this is actually what happened. In the moments where I least expected it, somebody was in the audience, and 2 days later I get an email, and like, you want to try out for this band or that band. So usually one thing led to another. That's how it happened for me.
So how did Kamelot come into play? Because I mean, people are already commenting, like over here,
Yeah.
for example, again, this one
So
here.
that was a crazy one. The Kamelot thing was
that chemistry's on the new DVD, man. You'll love it. People just love it.
Thank you. We're having so much fun with the band, and that's, again, goes back to what we're talking about. So the Kamelot thing, this is super interesting. I substituted for their former drummer, Casey Greeley, great drummer, Casey, and he couldn't do a show in 2017. It was in the States, and we were supporting Iron Maiden, big show, 25,000 people, California. It was crazy. And so they asked me to play that show. I flew in, and we had maybe a 40-minute rehearsal, and that was it. So we had to go on stage, do the show, and it went really well. And what I didn't know at the time, it was kind of obvious that probably Casey would not be able to continue with them. So they offered me the gig in that case, right? But I had just started a new band with some friends in Sweden, and we had just signed a deal. And it was just about to be announced and all that. So I couldn't, as a first thing, I couldn't officially join another band. I was like, guys, I love playing with you, but I can't do this right now. So I had to turn it down. It broke my heart because I really loved the band. But at first I had to turn it down. And they asked me 3 times. I turned it down 3 times, actually. So what then happened, they got a younger drummer from Belgium, Johan Nunes, great drummer. He did the album, and then he injured himself when it came to touring. Like during the first rehearsals, he injured his leg. He absolutely could not do the tour. And I had just gotten actually back from a video shoot for Mapex. Mapex, I was in Los Angeles for Mapex, doing a video for the new design lab, right?
Yeah.
And I just got back to Europe. I went to Frankfurt Musikmesse. It was 2017. And in the evening, I got the call like, hey, can you come over to the States? Can you tour with us? It was insane. I just got back from the States, right? And so I didn't really have to think about it. So I said, yes, I'm going to do the tour. Literally learned the songs on the plane, the new songs that I hadn't played yet with them. And next thing I know, like, we're playing New York, sold out. And yeah, the tour went great. And during the tour, it became clear that this was too good, to not do it. So they asked me again. This time, I talked with my other band, Syra from Sweden. They were okay with me doing both bands.
Yeah.
So I joined them. So that's how that happened. Yeah.
Boy, that's so fantastic. When you think about how things happen, just listen. Things move fast in this industry.
Yeah.
And either you're prepared or you're not.
Exactly, yeah.
It really is sometimes that simple of what it is. You've always been prepared so that when you got the call, listen, learning the songs on a flight to a gig is never easy.
No.
It's intense, but there's a certain fun in the intensity of what we do that when that comes on, it's just like, bring it on.
I love it. I love working under pressure, to be honest. Like, I love these situations. I live for that,
Incredible.
It's just great, yeah. It's wonderful. Of course. Sorry.
So many people that are joining us here. John Wilson, Simon Bejaring, Alex Gonzalez. I mean, it's here. Look at this here. This is so great to see so many people joining us here. People from, this one here. Check this out here. From Russia, from Ukraine.
Wonderful.
Look at this here. This is Arthur is a phenomenal drummer from Russia, from Ufa, Russia, and he attends a class that I give each week. Phenomenal. These are great people who are great fans of yours. So I mean, when you think about, listen, you've built this global business now that has drummers all around the world that love what you do and will follow you in any of the bands that you're in.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I will never take that for granted. Like, this is kind of the stuff that you're hoping for when you're a little kid, but when it really happens, it's like I still can't believe it sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll be eternally grateful for that. That people are actually interested in what I'm doing. Because I would be doing it anyways because I
Yeah.
love it. So.
Well, listen, you're great at what you do. You're a great guy. You're intelligent. You understand education. You're playing better now than ever before in your life. And because of your desire to want to learn, you just keep getting better. And being there is just fantastic.
Oh yeah, Bob is wonderful. Bob, he's been so supportive to me with Mapex. Like I can't thank Bob enough. He's fantastic.
What
What a
an
great guy.
incredible people. Tell me about Mapex. Now, how'd you get involved with Mapex?
Okay, so the Mapex story. Well, it also goes back to Otto Choi, like the former worldwide artist relations
And
guy.
Otto was based in Taiwan.
Exactly,
Started
exactly.
there, yeah.
And Otto and I used to run into each other at Frankfurt Musikmesse,
Yeah.
like for 10 years or so. And Otto loves this kind of music also, Stradivarius, Rhapsody, Kamelot. He's really into that.
Yeah.
And he really wanted to have me on Mapex. And I've always had an eye on Mapex because I was impressed how they kept improving things and putting out new great things. And so I was really, really interested. But sometimes you're just involved with another company, and it's like, I'm not the kind of guy who just easily goes from one company to another. Like I think you should not do that. You should try to, be play something that you can, be behind, and then usually you do that. So it took a lot of convincing and time, but at some point I was just like, it just happened. Like I made the switch to Zildjian also at the time, and then Mapex. They offered me the deal again, and I tested some Saturns, and
Yeah.
they were just phenomenal. Like I couldn't believe how great these drums sounded, and I was just sold. I was like, okay, I have to do this. Like I couldn't help it.
When you think about the products that they have, and now you're playing a Black Panther kit, is that what
Yes,
you
yes.
did? And what sizes are those drums?
Well, like the big metal sort of kit, like 222 kicks, 22 actually, but 16, kind of relatively short. I used to play 18, but it was
Yeah.
meant 16 with these ones. 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, plus the auxiliary drum. So like the whole, like the big setup. But
Yeah.
that's also, to be completely honest, the big setup is a lot for the stage. Like it's just nice to look at. It's nice to have the options, but I find myself playing basically the basic setup with the main rack and the 2 floor toms most of the time. So I would almost be okay with just playing that, but it's just nicer to have like all these drums on stage, And plus,
Oh,
the thing with the Black Panther is they sound phenomenal, all of them. What I love so much is that they engineered each drum differently, and I was thinking for basically all my life, I was like, why don't they do that? Because I mean, if you look at the violin and let's say a cello is not just a bigger violin. They construct it differently.
yeah.
And why would you construct an 8-inch tom the same way you construct like a 14-inch floor or something? It doesn't make sense. So it's so cool that they're really, engineering each drum individually to, make it the best drum possible.
And that's out of the mind of Russ Miller. Russ Miller is a
Yeah.
brilliant mind. Aside from being a great player, a great educator, a great reader, a great inspiration, a great interviewer. I mean, a great writer, a great recording artist. Then he has the design of these. These guys have put together for the design lab this incredible whole new way of thinking when it comes to each individual drum and the qualities that it can produce.
Exactly, and I think it really shines with the small toms, like especially
Yeah.
8 and 10. I remember I hit the 10-inch and I dropped my stick immediately because I was shocked how great it sounded when he first showed it to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Because making a 12-inch or a 16-inch floor, those are drums that are kind of easy to get to sound great. If it's a well-built drum, you can make them sound great. But those smaller toms, and also the auxiliary one, I don't know, like I haven't heard anything like them. But I gotta say, I love the Saturns too. I have like 4 or 5 Saturns around the world, and each of them is phenomenal. I just like the Saturn sounds so good out of the box. Also, like
That's what I have in my studio. I've got this one here is a Saturn V. This one back here is a Saturn IV. And I've got a new Evolution coming in, which is going to be great. So, I mean, this is all, they just make some great product. And you're out there playing this stuff and just slamming it hard, and it's holding up, which is incredible.
Also, the hardware. I think the hardware is really overlooked, and it shouldn't be. Like the Falcon stands, they're wonderful. If you look
Yeah.
at older videos of me, so many times you see me fiddling around, like during short breaks with cymbal stands because they would collapse.
Yeah.
Not with
Yeah.
Mapex anymore. Not with the Falcon. They're just durable and reliable.
What a difference. And those stands, the Falcon stands, I love it, the fact that you have accessibility to move your cymbal stands in any direction you want.
360. It's amazing.
Oh my God, this is so easy to set up and have that accessibility.
Exactly, it's so easy to set up. They're just, and fortunately, they're finally getting the credit for the great shells. But I don't think enough people are talking about the hardware. The hardware is really something.
That's a great point. You know, I was part of the design team for the Mapex Falcon double pedal and pedal, and also the Mapex Falcon hi-hat, the two-legged hi-hat.
Yeah,
I was a part of that team in the design, and I think we put together some real good product that is really, it holds up. You know, and especially when I travel around the world, I pull that stuff out of a box. It works out great, and it just is really, you know, just great hardware to play.
Absolutely, yeah, it's fantastic stuff. So I couldn't be happier. But and again, back to the same thing. It's also about the people, because the instrument is one thing, but the people behind it, that's another. And usually it reflects on the instrument.
Yeah.
This is something that I've seen over the years. Whenever there's stuff that there's people that I really love. Usually they're great people, and they love the product too. And you can tell it with the product. They're not just, you know, producing drums to make a buck. They're producing drums because they love drums.
Oh, absolutely. They're into it big time. They love producing it. But talking about producing some product, tell me about Jem Sessions. You're putting out some line of cool stuff. Fill me in about what you have with this.
That's what I hear. Okay, so this started as a little fun project. Actually, I was practicing in my room as part of a cymbal broke off, fell down, and I was thinking to myself, this could be a great pendant. You should just drill a hole into it, hang it around your neck. Looks great. And I talked with a very good friend of mine, and he loved the idea, and we started putting this thing together as a real company. So we are taking old broken cymbals, we're upcycling them, we're producing jewelry, and a part of the sales goes to a charity that is supporting musical lessons for children from families that can't afford it. So it's like the whole idea is like the upcycling is great, like, you know, taking something that's broken and making something out of it, and at the same time, you know, pushing a new generation of drummers with something that, you know, an old broken cymbal. Like, it's kind of a cycle, you know, like a circle.
That's a very positive. It's an upcycle, but it's a really positive message to it, which is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Show me that again. Those are your initials, right? That's AL.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe like that. So that would be AL, like my initials. No, actually, that way.
Yeah,
so that's my signature model. Actually, there should be another one flying around here. No, I can't find it right now. Ah, there you have it.
Yeah, you had one that was what's that? The guitar pick, right?
Yes, that's looks like a guitar pick. Those are little packages that they come in, and we're expanding now to other drummers, and basically everybody that wants to have their own design. We have a design team that works with us. So also for you, John, if you're interested in it, let's talk about it at some point.
I would love to have one. So how do we find? Is there a website? Is it how do we find?
Yes, exactly. There's a website. Maybe we can put the links somewhere at some point when we put this out, or in the comments. So Jem Sessions. I'll just hold it up again, and then we have a shop where you can order these. And of course,
is it jemsessions.com? Is that what it is?
I think the com should work. It's definitely .de and it's .shop, I think. But I have to look that up again. And yeah, and I think we're back, back to shipping to the States as well. That was a little difficult during the pandemic for a while, but now fortunately things are picking up again. And we're constantly looking for new drummers also to get their own signature models and help spread the word, you know?
Boy, I love the entrepreneurship that you have, Alex. I love the fact that listen. You're playing drums, you're playing great with Kamelot. That's one thing. You're doing some producing of this album that you're working on now in Italy. That's fantastic. You're doing some teaching, which is taking some information from what you've learned and you're sharing with people around the world. Now you're taking on this entrepreneurial idea of taking these pieces of metal and upcycling that to the creative possible. You're really involved in so many different things. So you really are you've got this real good entrepreneurship to yourself, which I think is really fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. And I also think actually it's very important nowadays, especially because unfortunately you cannot rely on one stream of income only. We're seeing it now with the pandemic because, I mean, financially, actually touring was my main stream of
Yeah,
income. But fortunately,
yeah,
I did really well for a couple of years. So I can get through this period now if it doesn't go on forever. But
yeah.
it goes to show unfortunately, you can never be sure that one thing is going to last. So it's better to have multiple sources. Besides, it's fun. It's also good to work on something else every now and then.
Well, this really is
Thank you,
what I
Leslie.
call multiple income streams. This really is the way we have to live now by
Yeah,
having different ways of being able to fuel ourselves. And everyone in every industry is thinking this way. It's not just in the music industry, but you have to have the desire to want to see the creativity in music and the creativity in business.
exactly.
And that's really what you're doing with Jem Sessions, which is great.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great. Yeah, I think, and like they say, like every crisis also like has a lot of potential, because it just forces you to think differently. And, things have to go on. We have to go on being creative, doing our thing. So it's good to look at different things you can do in life. Yeah.
Boy, good for you. Boy, in closing, Alex, just give me a comment about what you would say to any young drummers that are listening that would give them the hope that they can follow their dreams and live a life living their passion. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I'd say if it's really what you want to do, just really, then you have to go for it. But don't you can only do it like 100%. There's not like you can't do it half.
Yeah.
Learn the instrument, learn the craft, work on your timing. Make sure you can play to a click track. Work on your social skills. If you're not an English native speaker, try to learn a proper English. It really helps. Unfortunately, I've seen many great drummers, let's say from South America or even in Italy, and they could have international careers, but they just can't talk English. It's
Yeah.
stuff like that. So try to learn as many things as possible. Learn producing, learn recording yourself. Be a well-rounded musician and person, and then just don't give up. It can always be around the corner. Like you have to keep going. That's all I can say.
Boy, that perseverance of keeping on going is really what it's all about. And Bobby Angeletto, who's from upstate New York, another phenomenal drummer, teacher, and he's got a book he's working on that's coming out. He just put up the Jam Sessions shop that he has up here. So for everyone to go to it, gather the information, get all that information. You'll have some fun with it. Fantastic.
Thank you, Bobby.
Alex, you have been great. What a great pleasure to have you. I know it's much later on in the evening now in Italy, where you get a chance to get a nice glass of red wine, maybe a nice Chianti, a nice plate of pasta with some good meat and everything. Sit down with your girlfriend, enjoy. You have done absolutely fantastic. On behalf of Mapex and the entire team worldwide, we thank you so much for being a good representation of our product and moving forward and being a real good role model for the next generation.
Tom, thank you so much. And yeah, it was just an honor and a privilege to talk with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll keep in touch for sure.
Absolutely.
Very well. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Right.